You know what needs to be in a terrarium? A hobbit hole. And that's why, in this video, I'll show you how to make a mini hobbit hole inside of a terrarium, and the steps I follow to do so. Let's get started. I'll be using a small vase for this build, as I believe it will be a good size for the hobbit hole that I want to build. I'll next add Leca as a drainage layer so that excess water can drain out of the substrate. On top of this, we'll go some window screen mesh to stop substrate from falling down into the drainage layer. I'll then add my tropical terrarium substrate on top of this, made up of Coco Coir, worm castings, Sphagnum Moss, lava rock, and akadama. Before I continue, I need to model the door and window for the hobbit hole. I'll start by cutting some modelling clay and rolling it out flat. I'll then cut the door shape out of the clay. Using sculpting tools, I'll mark in some lines to mimic wood and where the frame will go around the outside. I'll also add in this mini door handle. To add more depth, I'll put a frame around the edge of the door, which will be made out of stone. Well, it's still made of clay, but we'll paint it to look like stone. I'll repeat the same steps for the window, using a knife to carve out the window frame. I'm also going to create a mini trapdoor to go on top, which I'm detailing again with the metal tool, and a crate to go out front. I may not end up using all of this, but I'll make it just in case. I'm now going to bake them in the oven for 15 minutes at 140 degrees Celsius. I'll now spray down the models with white primer on my beautiful painting mat. I'm making sure to cover all the sides, and I'll flip them over and prime the other sides as well. I then left them to dry for a couple hours with a fan to speed up the process. I'll be using grey and brown paint to add to the wooden and stone parts of each model. I think modelling really can bring the terrarium hobby to the next level, and I've got a bunch of crazy ideas for what I can do with this in the future. After I'd finished all of the painting, I left them all to dry overnight. I'm going to use these pieces of rock for the hardscape, but before I place them in the vase, I'm going to start to assemble the hobbit house outside of it first. To stick them together, I'll use SuperGlue and tissue, which creates a super strong bond that will go rock solid. I'll use a Stanley knife to remove the excess tissue. I'm also going to stick the door on using the same method. I'm now going to use some sticky substrate mix, which I'll combine with water to stick to any surfaces that I place it on. I'll then use this to cover up any tissue that's exposed from the gluing. I'm now going to stick some pieces of moss onto the substrate, which will grow into it and gather nutrients from it. It was now ready to go inside of the vase. After I placed it in, I then added a stone as a back wall for behind the window and built up the substrate behind it. I then added some extra stones on top of the window and more substrate on top of this. I also added some sticky substrate over the stones to help hold them in place. Remember the hatch from earlier? I'm now going to place it on top to add some more detail. I'm now going to start planting some of the moss. To do this, I first need to trim off the rhizome, as otherwise it will be too large to fit in. Don't worry, this won't harm the moss. I continued to build up the moss around the vase and also added this tiny Pilea Moon Valley cutting as well as this tiny pine cone. These fern cuttings were super fiddly and kind of a pain to get in, but in the end I managed to get them in place. I also removed the excess moss and substrate from in front of the window because it was becoming hard to see in. This piece of driftwood could look cool, so I'm going to snap it down to size and position it on the right. I can also now wedge in some moss behind it. In the front here, I'll add some sand for colour variation and depth. I'll top this off with some pebbles to create a mini path. To finish off this section, I'll add some mini gravel and some moss in front of the window. I'll also add in this twisty Paulownia repens cutting into the left side, and I'll use the pine cone to help manoeuvre it in place. I spotted a perfect gap for some moss on the left, so I wedged this piece in place. I'm going to add a few plant cuttings to finish off the details, including this Vitonia and Ficus quercifolia. This should grow and carpet the moss over time, helping to create an overgrown feel. I'm now going to spray down the vase with water. Take note of how much I'm adding here, as I've not sped this section up, and this is the exact amount I use. Overwatering is a common beginner terrarium mistake, so always use less than you think. The final step to finish this terrarium is to add springtails, which will eat any mould that grows on the wood or any dead plants. I will also add in this lid on top to keep in humidity. Overall, I'm super happy with how this turned out. I love the mini window and door and how this looks like it could be a slice from a tiny world. In the future, I would add a light inside the window to light it up from the inside to make it look as though someone was home, or maybe a chimney with mist coming out of the top. If you want to see more like this, click on this video where I create an ATST terrarium. You don't want to miss out on this one.